Ferdinand's call reminded John that New York, which was now in ruins, was actually a gold nugget. The subsequent problems caused by the Battle of New York are not only the alien technology, but also the repair and reconstruction work. Just a piece of the pie would put one more person in Vanity Fair magazine. A huge repair and reconstruction project and huge government orders. As long as it is managed properly, the ranking on the rich list can be raised by several places. John casually picked up the Mind Scepter, whose energy glow had dimmed considerably, and said, "Contact Nick Fury." Moss said, "Contacting Nick Fury." The call was connected quickly. "I found what you wanted, come and get it." How can you make half of S.H.I.E.L.D. show up at your door with just one sentence? John was putting a picture into a frame when the doorbell rang at the Wick's house. Hearing the sound, he opened the door. Outside the door is Black Egg. No, it's Nick Fury, who appears at the door with his warriors. Natasha and Barton stood on both sides. The captain of the S.H.I.E.L.D. commando team, Rumlow, led the team fully armed. The bald agent named Sitwell looked very uncomfortable and looked around. There are agents monitoring the surrounding intersections. If they weren't afraid of being too conspicuous, they would simply block off a few streets and send planes to patrol the sky. Fury, wearing a black trench coat and with his hands behind his back, asked, "Where's the stuff?" John raised his eyebrows and looked outside. "With so many people here, I don't have enough food to entertain them." Looking at Sitwell, John teased, "It looks like your hand slipped." Sitwell looked even more uncomfortable. Who could have thought that Captain America would say, "Long live Hydra" himself? He thought the game was a sure win, but it turned out to be someone else pretending. But he couldn't say this, otherwise Fury would know his identity as a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. Everyone has a suspect, but no one can say it out loud. Looking at John's playful expression, he felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten a bug. John casually took out the Staff of Mind. He had pirated the thing himself anyway, so it wasn't of much use. The moment they saw the Mind Scepter, everyone had an expression as if to say, "It's you." Especially Fury, who has been monitoring all the surveillance cameras on several streets around Wick's house these days. John had never left the house, but suddenly took out the Mind Scepter at home. "Are you really not going to pretend at all? I'm a wizard, isn't it reasonable for me to find this thing?" John saw what Fury was thinking. He would not take the blame. This was done by the Avengers. He glanced at Natasha and said, "Agent Romanoff can prove it for me." Natasha was called and she looked at the photo frame in John's hand. It contained a photo of herself vomiting while holding onto a tree trunk. Her face darkened. "I'm so angry, but I can't hit people." Fury didn't bother with this, he just wanted to get the Mind Scepter back. He looked at the scepter and frowned. "Is this thing a little different?" Looking closely, the energy glow dimmed by several degrees. His face also turned black. What on earth was this kid doing with the Mind Scepter? John handed the Mind Scepter to Agent Sitwell, who was about to take it. When the other party was about to take it, he hesitated and said, "Are you sure you don't want to ask someone else to take it? Aren't you afraid it will be lost?" His meaning is clear. Sitwell took a deep breath. "Who are you implying?" Barton stood there and asked Natasha curiously, "Has he always been like this?" Natasha remained silent. She had never realized that he deserved a beating before. In the end, the Mind Scepter was taken back and escorted back by the S.H.I.E.L.D. commandos, while Fury was left behind. But before he could even get a cup of coffee, he saw a business card handed to him by John. Fury saw the business card and said in surprise, "Silverhand Fashion Architecture? Taran Industrial Transformation has begun to get involved in the real estate industry?" John shrugged. "Look behind you." Fury looked out at the street view overlooking Manhattan's top luxury homes. It was once rich and prosperous, but now only ruins and desolation remain. "This place needs to be rebuilt, but I have a better idea." John added a drop of unknown potion to the photo in the frame, and the photo inside began to move. "Have you seen Old Bridgetown?" Fury thought of Coulson's handling of Old Bridgetown, and he turned to look at John. "You may know something about wizards, but not everything." The photo was like a short video, repeating Natasha's embarrassing moments over and over again. John picked up a cup and threw it on the ground. "Destruction is not our specialty." The cup shattered to the ground and he waved his wand. All the fragments gathered in one direction and finally turned back into a complete cup in John's hand. John poured hot water into it and chuckled, "Repair it is." Fury stared at the water cup, witnessing the scene with his own eyes. He said in a deep voice, "What do you want?" "Nothing, just a small contribution to New York," John said casually after taking a sip of hot water. My team is happy to take over the reconstruction of damaged buildings in Manhattan. Of course, we have to pay. Fury said, You let people on the street watch a wizard perform a spell? Aren't you afraid that the people will know about the wizard? No way. John looked at Fury in surprise. Just half a month ago, aliens and guys who claimed to be gods flew over here, as well as billionaires and an angry Hulk. You think these are no more unusual than wizards? You already have aliens and gods, so why are you still worrying about whether there are wizards? He could really is. Perhaps the meaning in John's eyes was too obvious, and Fury was also thinking about bringing wizards into the public eye. The age of superheroes is the worst of times. Because the birth of superheroes means that supervillains and greater crises may come. It is also the best era. Faced with aliens that can destroy New York, the purple potato spirit is eyeing them covetously. Wouldn't it be easier for them to accept a wizard who is also a native of this world and is willing to release good intentions? The gap between ordinary people and wizards before the Battle of New York. Those who are not of my race must have different hearts. This is also the case between countries. What's more, there is a difference between those who have magic and those who don't. They will be afraid of the wizard's magic and will have conflicts with the wizard. But when faced with aliens threatening the world, they have a common enemy. The existence of a crisis is the easiest way to achieve internal unity. Even the Hulk has become a hero. Captain America, a young man in his 90s, is accepted, and Thor, the alien handsome guy, is also very popular. Why are the world's indigenous wizards being excluded? As the king of agents, Fury is naturally no fool. He also understood this truth. To protect this world, the power of wizards was indispensable. After all, he said that the Avengers was meant to attract outstanding talents from all over the world. The power of wizards cannot be excluded, and must even be fought for. Thinking quickly in his mind, Fury said, I can't decide. This needs to be decided by the city government. John smiled and said, In that case, I'll take it as your consent. If S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't object, the city government certainly won't object. Soon, in New York, an inconspicuous silver hand fashion construction company was established. The task of rebuilding Manhattan and repairing the damaged buildings fell to this small company. Fix New York? The wizard is good at it. A worker wearing a silver-handed construction logo and a funny miner's hat was seen gesturing with a branch in front of the damaged house. The damaged house was pieced together from the ruins as if time had gone back. Even the furniture that was missing parts became intact. The efficiency is so high that one person is equivalent to an entire construction team. Wait until people get used to this construction team. Things like confidentiality laws will no longer be necessary in the future. Wizards no longer need to hide their identities. Live uprightly in this world. Even a dark wizard who wanted to start a war to eliminate muggles couldn't help but give a thumbs up after knowing this. Power is paramount, since you don't want to destroy everyone except wizards. Then make those people become dependent on wizards. This is the first step. Standing on one of the few surviving skyscrapers in Manhattan, John looked down at the city with a smile on his face. Let wizards live openly. Queens. Shang-Chi had nightmares for several days. He wanted to find someone to talk to, but there was no one he could talk to. Peter and Aunt May left for a few days, so Shang-Chi had to go to Midtown High School with the Black Circle by himself. Fortunately, apart from Manhattan, which was severely damaged, the other boroughs were not affected too much. Passing by the construction team that was busy moving the remains of the Chitauri, Shang-Chi's thoughts turned. He killed someone. Killed again. When the Chitauri invaded, he happened to be working in Manhattan and had no choice but to fight back. Even with high technology, Shang-Chi's strength is enough to deal with aliens. He killed a few Zatori soldiers and all was well. Until he saw that someone took advantage of the chaos to commit a crime. The fallen woman and the robbers who were searching her for valuables. Shang-Chi couldn't help himself and beat the robber to death. This was something he had not expected. Rage clouded his mind, and his punch seemed to have infinite power, breaking the man's bones. Although in this chaotic time, no one would notice the death of a gangster. But Shang-Chi, who killed someone for the second time, had a nightmare. He ran back to his queen's apartment and spent an hour washing his hands with water. He didn't stop until his skin turned white from being soaked in water, and stared blankly at his powerful hands. For some reason, he was a little scared. He is obviously a scumbag, so he should just die. But he began to fear returning to his old life. He didn't want to become as cruel and ruthless as his father. So he started having nightmares. In his dream, he returned to the Ten Rings Gang's base. He saw his father. civil and military. Besides, younger sister. He didn't dare look into his sister's eyes, for he was afraid of seeing disappointment. It was my own escape that left my sister there. In the dream, Wenwu brought Shang-Chi with him, and just like the night he left, he handed over his weapon. Go kill him. The tone was cold and ruthless, carrying an order that could not be refused. To kill. You are a natural-born killing machine. Go kill those people, kill those who are in the way. Shang-Chi struggled. He didn't want to be a killing machine, nor did he want to be an emotionless killer. He dropped his weapon and fled. This once warm home has become like a cage. He ran and looked back to see his sister's disappointed eyes and crying expression. Wenwu's gloomy face. He didn't dare to look. As he ran, the darkness approached him, as if to swallow him completely. What's wrong with you? Shang-Chi woke up and the white-haired old man next to him waved his hand. How did you manage to sleep standing up on the street? Sorry, Shang-Chi left in a hurry, leaving the old man with a look of confusion. After John came out, Turan Industries became a desperate working day again. The newly established recycling and cleaning department? John stared at the document that needed to be signed and looked at Hattie. Hattie said calmly, the group of people Ferdinand recruited. Oh, it's them. John remembered that he had said yesterday that he would send a group of people to recover the Chitauri technology. John signed several more neatly and cleanly. It's nothing more than the losses in recent days and the need to purchase some equipment. Orloff bought several plots of land in Washington to build new energy power generation, which made the financial situation of Turan Industries somewhat dangerous. After seeing the Iron Soldier's might, the military felt that it was one of the few treasures that could compete with the aliens, and signed a new order. The funds in Turan Industries' account are getting less and less, which is really worrying. John glanced at it casually and said, business can slow down a bit during this period. Hattie nodded, and John finished all the work and leaned back in the comfortable chair. Give me a cup of coffee, hand ground, thank you. Hearing his words, Hattie curled her lips, went out and took out a pack of instant coffee and brewed it with hot water. John couldn't tell anyway. After this period of assistant career, Hattie gradually learned some things about John. For example, she suspected that John didn't actually have a sense of taste. She had been observing for quite some time, and when it came to drinking coffee, John never cared what kind of coffee he drank. Or rather, he just cares about the state of drinking coffee. The same was true for food. She had never seen anything edible in the refrigerator at John's house. When eating out, I always take a bite and never touch the food again. So Hattie speculated that maybe John didn't dislike eating, but just couldn't taste the food. The instant coffee was brought in, and John picked it up and took a sip with a satisfied look on his face. Don't you think wearing sunglasses is a nuisance? John glanced at Hattie's sunglasses that covered half of her face. Hattie said calmly, I like these sunglasses. Then you really love deeply. John put down his coffee and said lazily, how about if you don't wear sunglasses to work, I'll give you a raise? No. Hattie refused decisively. After she finished speaking, she found that John didn't speak. He turned his head and saw John staring at him. I think you should understand me, Miss Hattie. John said lightly, I don't mind where you come from, just like Natasha. Hiding the truth will only create distance between us. John had spoken plainly. Hattie hesitated too. To be honest, John had no reservations about her. Not only did he let Hattie know the wizard's identity, but he also allowed Hattie to witness the emergence of the Second Alliance in broad daylight. It is impossible for Hattie not to be moved by all these actions. As an agent, the reason why he is so trusted is not because of his superb acting skills or outstanding appearance. It was simply because of John's arrogance and his trust in his employees. So after hesitating for a moment, Hattie said, I'm an agent. John said calmly, I know. Taking a deep breath, Hattie continued, I'm an MI6 agent, and I've been ordered here to be an assistant. She tried to see a hint of anger on John's face, but she failed. John looked calm, as if he was listening to someone else's story. But when he heard about MI6, he was a little surprised. I didn't expect that it was an agent from my hometown. Seeing that he didn't react much, Hattie said, I'm not monitoring you or trying to harm you. On the contrary, I'm here to assist you. My superiors have given me a lot of freedom. Your superior is very smart. John smiled. I think we can put aside the grudges in our hearts. He stood up and walked to Hattie, staring into her eyes behind the sunglasses, and said, Welcome, Miss Hattie Shaw. He extended his hand, a smile on his lips, and said, It would be even better if you could get the job done. Hattie raised the corners of her mouth and smiled. What are you thinking about, boss? Want to escape work? No way. After breaking through that layer of window paper, Hattie felt a sense of relief. It's not a pleasant feeling to keep a secret. She looked at the coffee cup in her hand, lost in thought. Do you have to drink hand ground? She glared at the closed office door, pouring coffee beans and adding 10 sugar cubes to the cup. Talon Industries' underground laboratories are off limits. Even Orloff had to declare before entering. John walked in and saw Ivan, who had rarely put down his fighter armor, tinkering with Chitauri weapons. The materials used in these weapons are superior to ours. Ivan took off his goggles and said with a toothpick in his mouth, in terms of technology alone, they are also ahead of us. He pointed to a damaged aircraft, suspension technology. I disassembled it and found that the technology inside is somewhat similar to the magic crystal you gave me. Take out a purple oval object, which is the operating core of Chitauri technology. A power source to power Chitauri weapons that can be used in a variety of ways. Apart from anything else, even if these materials were sold, they could generate a huge amount of income for Talon Industries. But only a fool would sell these things. The technology inside is what matters. The technology team is a little weak. John fell into deep thought after hearing this. He couldn't leave everything to Ivan alone. Even if Ivan doesn't mind, the efficiency of one person working hard is not as good as that of a group of people doing research. John plans to expand his research team. Talon Ministry of Science and Technology. The Talon Technology Department is now looking for heroes and righteous people from all over the world to take up positions. When Orloff returned, he was silent, because he discovered that Talon Industries originally had one of the few weapons departments. As a result, up to now, not only have several departments been involved, but he still can't say that John did anything wrong. So, you pull these things back? Orloff was a little confused as he looked at the carts of Chitauri weapons pulled back by the recycling and cleaning department. Even if he thought with his fingernails, he knew what these things meant to America. You know, they could even tear up the contract signed with the city government without mercy, but John was able to compete with the other party and get those things back. Apart from Stark Industries, only Talon Industries has this honor. Thank you for your hard work, Adrian. John was greeting Adrian, who was driving back. This man who was almost bankrupt successfully pulled himself back from the brink of bankruptcy after joining Talon Industries. Talon Industries itself is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, and leaning on this big tree gives Adrian an extra layer of security. The materials pulled back are recycled and liquidated by Talon Industries. Adrian made a small profit. Hearing John greet him, he walked over with a smile on his face and looked flattered. Mr. Wick, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. John shrugged. Ferdinand made a good suggestion. From the perspective of a boss, it would be foolish to refuse. Adrian was very happy that his men would not have to suffer due to unemployment. The fairness he lost was restored for him by Talon Industries. John waved goodbye to him and turned to look at Orloff, who had returned from Washington. Did you enjoy your trip to Washington? When talking about this, Orloff smiled a smile that everyone understood. We've had some good results. We've already signed new energy contracts for several cities, Orloff said. That woman from Stark Industries is no pushover either. She's also signed contracts. When it comes to this, Orloff has a lot of complaints. Those damn capitalists made a lot of money this way. He cursed as if he wasn't one of those people. But Orloff didn't just come back with complaints. He said, "We've grown a little too fast this year, John." He warned, "We are now a little overloaded with capital flows and need to slow down the pace." If John set up a few more departments and recruited some new talents or machines, Talon would probably be in a financial crisis. John naturally understood this. The two went to the Talon Technology Department. Inside, besides Ivan, there were several new people. These people are highly educated talents transferred from other departments. In the past, Talon Industries focused on civilian weapons, which were just firearms, resulting in a serious lack of talent in this area. When several new employees saw the boss, they hurriedly greeted him. Orloff was very satisfied with their attitude and nodded reservedly, highlighting the sense of class between employees and boss. When he saw Ivan, he turned into Orloff and greeted Ivan enthusiastically. "Have you eaten yet? Haven't you eaten yet? Let's go eat together." A new 5-star hotel has opened in Queens. He looked so enthusiastic that he seemed willing to lick Ivan's shoes. After giving Ivan the custom-made leather shoes from Washington, Orloff turned around and saw the new employee's look of astonishment. He coughed twice and frowned. The main task of this department is to research Chitauri technology. Ivan doesn't come here often, and for him, these new technologies are nothing too amazing except for the materials used. That's right, after all, he is a genius like Tony Stark. Orlov was also very interested in the aliens he had not seen, and began to go to the Ministry of Science and Technology all day long. Those are not garbage, but mountains of gold and silver. Orlov had begun to look forward to Talern Industries becoming a behemoth like Stark Industries. It's time for Shang-Chi to pay John's rent. John arrived in person, and when he opened the door he saw Shang-Chi with a pair of panda eyes. He was very curious. Are you possessed or were you simply beaten? Shang-Chi looked tired. Because of nightmares, he was often distracted and even his grades dropped a lot. John disapproved of this. As a student, John said earnestly, you should learn moderation. Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi talked about his nightmare, and John touched his forehead after listening. Are you okay? Ah. Shang-Chi was a little confused. Is this concern? But why is the tone so weird? Looking at John's expression again, it was as if he saw a hopeless fool. John was really curious about how Wenwu's personality developed into Shang-Chi's. What was that person doing when you killed him? He robbed. Shang-Chi said hesitantly. John sighed. You killed a scumbag who attacked his compatriots in times of crisis. What are you blaming yourself for? He couldn't help shaking his head. If it was Dax, not to mention accidentally killing the man, he would be killed in minutes even if he knelt down. I can only say that children's hearts are still pure. He's committing a crime, and you're trying to stop him from committing a crime. You shouldn't think about killing someone, but rather that you've saved someone. You saved that woman. In the chaos, life was so fragile. You killed the Chitauri soldiers and prevented evil. You should be proud, not blame yourself. John stared into Shang-Chi's confused eyes and said word by word, Go wash your face and take a good look at the world. The confusion in Shang-Chi's eyes gradually disappeared. Finally, he let out a long breath. It was a feeling of relief, of being free from that fear and nightmare. Seeing that he had recovered, John pulled him out. Where are you going? Shang-Chi was confused. After relaxing, he felt a wave of sleepiness attacking him and was about to go back to bed to have a good sleep. To your friend's house, of course, John said matter-of-factly. Shang-Chi was so sleepy that he was dragged to Parker's house. Peter was very happy, and May was also very happy. They took out the clothes they bought in Miami and gave them to John. I've always wanted to give it to you, but I never had the chance. May smiled happily. John looked at the beach suit in deep thought. A red shirt with coconut trees printed on it and big green beach pants. He nodded with difficulty, trying to convince May that he would wear it one day. May said she believed it, turned around and pushed John into the bathroom, asking him to change his clothes and come out to see. John hesitated for a moment, then changed his clothes and came out. Peter ran out happily and wanted to invite May to see the London Bridge he had put together. As soon as he came out, he saw John's outfit, and he tripped over his left foot and landed face first on the ground. Shang-Chi came out after hearing the noise, and the drowsy man suddenly woke up with a start. The corners of his mouth curled up and he was about to laugh. John smiled and said, I don't mind raising your rent. The smile disappears, and Shang-Chi looks compassionate. If he hadn't tried hard to suppress the corners of his mouth, people would probably think he was pitying the world. Unfortunately, Peter didn't have this awareness. When he saw John's appearance, he ignored the pain and laughed. The price was that when he pulled May into the room to see London Bridge, he saw a pile of neatly arranged building blocks. He burst into tears when the finished product he had worked so hard on for many days returned to its factory settings. May was also helpless. You said you were fine, didn't you know that John would hold a grudge? Bullying Peter was one of John's few pastimes. After all, the future Spider-Man can't let others bully him even if he doesn't bully others, right? According to the law of conservation of energy, as long as Peter bullies others enough, the probability of him being bullied in the future will be greatly reduced. This is all my father's good intentions. For a moment, John felt truly great. Only Shang-Chi looked at him with an expression that seemed to want to say something but was hesitant. It's okay to deceive others, but why do you deceive yourself? After his guest appearance as the landlord, John returned to his days in the laboratory. Today's destroyer armor is more than just about control. John snapped his fingers, and the visor of the destroyer armor opened. The scorching energy beam struck the target. His control over the destroyer is now about the same as Loki's. John waved away the golden runes and thought, There are about 20 permissions unlocked for the destroyer armor. He looked at the icebox again, his eyes falling on two objects. One is the serum found in Satan's mansion, and the other is the PIM particles exchanged from Fury. In Marvel, there are always times when people wonder whether the Earth, which is called backward, is really backward. For example, PIM particles, when the Chitauri technology was already able to invade other planets, this thing could make people shrink and enlarge. It may even appear as a key prop in the future. This kind of black technology is more powerful than the Chitauri's technology. I remember Dad also has shares in PIM Technologies. John stroked his chin. PIM Technologies is different from Hammer Industries. Its scale is far smaller than Hammer Industries. My dad probably made the investment just for fun. There was a time when he was quite fond of investing. Well, it was the time when I was trying to compete with the family status and make my son a rich second generation. Unfortunately, despite trying so hard, he still failed. Because his son is the first generation of rich people. John picked up the PIM particles and the red substance was not water. If this thing can be made public, it will bring a new technological revolution to the world. But unfortunately, this idea is not realistic. John didn't want to make it public either. Moss, search for information about PIM Technologies for me. Yes, sir. Moss is very fast. All the information about PIM Technology Company was displayed on the screen. John stared at the information above. The president of PIM Technologies isn't named Pim? Looking at the bald man named Darren Cross, John discovered that Americans really like this bald hairstyle. I know quite a few bald people and they come in all colors. Dad doesn't have that many shares here. John thought thoughtfully. This man had been searching for the technology to shrink organisms, but it wasn't John's style to give it to him for free. In that case, let's look for opportunities for cooperation. Since this technology cannot be used for military purposes, let's use it for our own benefit. As for Ant-Man, he can also be Ant-Man by helping himself. Considering this, John decided to go to PIM Technologies. John casually put the PIM particles into his pocket and walked out of the laboratory. After many days, Ferdinand finally returned to his old job. He breathed carefully on a luxury car and wiped the dust off it with his sleeve. Seeing John coming out, he hurriedly opened the door for John. From a street thug to the pride of the family. Ferdinand was used to it, especially when his cousin, who was a distant relative, came to visit him in person to express his gratitude. That moment was the most proud moment for the Pierce family. Boss, where are we going? PIM Technologies. Okay. As a driver, Ferdinand has formed the habit of entering the navigation while John says the address. When the navigation revealed the company's location, Ferdinand fell silent. Boss, the company you're talking about, it's in San Francisco. After saying that, Ferdinand looked at John. He doesn't think driving across state lines is a wise option. John also fell silent. He didn't expect that PIM Technology Company was so far away. The two looked at each other in silence. A week later, the once shiny and beautiful luxury car now looks dusty and worn. Ferdinand went from being heartbroken at first to feeling numb later on. City of San Francisco. The surrounding architectural styles are different from those in New York, and there are fewer high-rise buildings, as if there is an extra layer of warm filter. Ferdinand really didn't expect that his boss was such a stubborn guy, and he actually drove over when he said he would. After a week of driving, Ferdinand felt his but was almost numb. The car was stopped before it entered the gate of PIM's company. The security guard at the door looked at the luxury car, paid enough attention to it, and personally asked about its purpose. Shareholders who haven't been here for a long time, come in and take a look at my assets. John looked at the security guard and chuckled, report to Darren Cross and tell him that John Wick is here. Hearing this name and the other party's indifference towards his own president, the security personnel didn't dare to stop him. The car stopped in front of PIM Technologies and John got out. Just think of it as a journey, John said casually. It's fun, isn't it? Ferdinand looked resentful. This trip was too casual. John glanced at the expression on his face and said lightly, add 1,000. Boss, please tell me what you want. Ferdinand said with a bright smile on his face. As an employee, is there anything more comfortable than being humiliated by your boss's ability to use money? The two walked into PIM Technologies. Darren Cross had already learned from the security guard at the door that a shareholder who had not been in charge of the company for several years was coming. He had already arrived at the entrance and was waiting. Welcome, Mr. Wick. Darren is not the type to protect those ignorant people. He naturally knew this influential figure who held shares in PIM Technologies. In the past year, John has appeared in Vanity Fair magazine quite a few times. Darren shook John's hand warmly. He leaned closer to John and whispered, "I'm flattered to have you here, Mr. Wick." Having said that, there was reluctance and fear in his eyes. The last company that held shares like himself, Hammer Industries, was completely owned by Wick. Although PIM Technologies was not founded by Darren, he was unwilling to let the company fall into the hands of others. Beside him, a black-haired woman in a business suit also smiled and said, "Welcome, Mr. Wick." "This is Miss Hope Pym," Darren said the woman's name. "With Pym, the identity is clear." John smiled and said, "Hello, Miss Pym." He looked at Darren and smiled, "I hope my coming won't disturb you." "Of course not," Darren said with a false smile. "I'll show you around myself." "Thank you for your help." John was also polite. Darren asked Hope to leave and took John on a tour himself. PIM Technologies is different from Taran Industries. They are a company that develops technological products. John toured the area and walked into a door with the words, "Future Laboratory," written on it. Inside were scientific researchers in white coats, and John casually toured the place, nodding occasionally at Darren's voice. John stopped when the tour was almost over. "Are you interested in making a deal, Mr. Cross?" John smiled. Darren looked at this unbelievably young man and alarm bells started ringing in his heart. Has the real intention been revealed? Hope Pym is Hank Pym's daughter. She has some conflicts with her father and she has complaints against her father who founded the company because of her mother's affairs. But this does not mean that she is willing to see her father's company being interfered with by others. Darren Cross is Dr. Pym's student. At first he is very good, trusted by Dr. Pym, and is very talented. It was not until Dr. Pym discovered that his student had been trying to create Pym particles that he realized his student's evil ambitions. It was too late. Darren had grown stronger and even brought Hopra to the board of directors and removed Pym from the position of CEO. Hope was just angry at her father at first, but after discovering Darren's true intention, she began to realize that she had done something wrong. Darren has been guarding against her tightly, never giving her the chance to kick out her father like she did. On the contrary, he also sidelined himself. The stubborn Hopra was too embarrassed to ask Dr. Pym for help, so she moved around in this huge company on her own. Now that the third largest shareholder, who has not appeared for a long time, has appeared, Hope has to take it seriously. The last time the third shareholder came out was when PIM Technologies was facing a crisis. It was also that time that forced Dr. Pym to exchange his shares for a glimmer of hope. Even when Darren voted to kick Dr. Pym out, shareholder number 3 remained indifferent and just spoke on the phone. In the same circle of wealthy people, everyone is aware of each other's identities. Hope naturally knew the identity of the third shareholder, so he was even more wary. He is a super rich man who owns tens of billions of assets and recently acquired Hammer Industries. If he gets help from him, Darren may be able to take over the company. At this time, Hope was waiting at the door anxiously. She wanted to find out what Mr. Wick had to say so as to decide what to do next. Just after she waited for a long time, she saw 3 people coming out. John and Darren walked in front, and the 2 of them were as close as old friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. Welcome to come often, Mr. Wick. I hope to have the opportunity to invite you to my winery, where I have a lot of good wines. By the way, maybe you will be interested. We have begun to focus on laser weapon research. Hope was like hell, she knew Darren too well. Although this person always has a smiling face, he is actually full of calculations towards others. 3 parts of smile hides 7 parts of calculation. Such a person actually took the initiative to invite John to his winery for the first time. You know, only those who Darren regards as close partners or family members can go to that winery. How long has it been? Hope stood there in a daze. Darren said goodbye to John reluctantly. Next time you come, please give me the opportunity to invite you. There will be a chance, John said with a smile. I hope you'll give me a bigger surprise next time we meet. He sounded like he was satisfied with the current operation of the company. But Darren understood what he meant and his smile widened. I will do my best to satisfy you, Mr. Wick. Ferdinand followed behind, looking amazed. He could never have imagined that this was how transactions between big guys worked. John took out the PIM particles and the formula, which brought Darren to his knees. You have to know that PIM particles are nothing special. After all, it is not that easy to reverse deduce them. When Dr. Pym worked at SHIELD, the world's top scientific talents gathered there, but none of them could deduce it through PIM particles. This shows how difficult that thing is. The formula is different. It was created by Howard Stark after studying PIM particles. Although it is not complete, it can also allow Darren, who is studying PIM particles, to take a big step forward. With the addition of real PIM particles, Darren, who had studied under Dr. Pym, was confident that he could research real PIM particles. This is equivalent to someone sending a mountain of gold. How could Darren not be happy? Even if he handed over all his shares and was kicked out, as long as he could produce PIM particles, the world's richest people would rush to cooperate with him. Just a PIM Technologies company? Compared to behemoths like Stark Industries and Hammer Industries, it's nothing. Darren smiled brightly and didn't even give Hope a chance. He personally walked him out the door and watched John get into the dusty luxury car and leave. He was smiling all day long. At one point, the employees of PIM Technologies wondered whether Hope had agreed to Darren's pursuit. Hope smiled, but felt a wave of worry and irritation in his heart. Because of Darren, she had no chance of getting close to John. She hesitated whether to tell her father about this. If it was Dr. Pym, he should be able to notice something. As soon as this thought passed through her mind, she remembered her mother's departure and her father's actions. After all, there is resentment in my heart. Ferdinand vowed that he would learn to fly a plane in the future. This way I don't have to drive from New York to San Francisco for a week, stay there for 2 hours, and then drive from San Francisco back to New York. After 2 weeks of driving, he felt like he was going to get hemorrhoids on his butt. He drove into the house with his eyes blank, lay on the lawn and took a deep breath. The smell of the earth. What are you doing? Roman came out and saw his brother lying on the lawn. He was about to say something but stopped talking. Mrs. Roll's Teddy pooped here this morning. Ahem. Ferdinand got up quickly and said he smelled like indigestion. Damn Mrs. Roll, she told me to tie up the dog and not listen. He looked gloomy. Roman looked at the dusty luxury car, and this car-loving guy felt heartbroken. Without Ferdinand's instructions, he took the initiative to wash the car. If he hadn't extorted $100 from Ferdinand later, perhaps Ferdinand would have praised him for being sensible. Hammer Industries. John almost forgot that he still had this company. Once one of the arms giants, it is now the leader in arms. Hammer Industries itself has a strong foundation, with production lines that can compete with Stark's weapons department and many weapons design experts. When Justin Hammer was imprisoned some time ago, his experts were ready to jump ship. Fortunately, Taran Industries intercepted all of them, and after acquiring Hammer Industries, those experts who were thought to have jumped ship were stuffed back into Hammer Industries. This made them not know what to say for a moment. I heard that those people didn't dare show up in the hall of Hammer Industries for several months, for fear that they would be discovered that they had jumped jobs and returned to Hammer Industries. If this gets out, I guess people in the weapons field will be able to eat 3 bowls of rice. John, who had just returned to New York, was intercepted by Hattie. He successfully arrived at Hammer Industries on the green motorcycle that was rushing through traffic. The client who wanted to see him had been in New York for 3 days. Taking John to the elevator, Hattie said nervously, "This time, a big shot is here. This is related to the future development of our company." John heard this nonchalantly. How big of a figure is he? Could it be that the president will come to visit in person? But that doesn't seem very big. The elevator reached the top floor. One of the reasons why John didn't like staying at Hammer Industries was that the building was too short. Not to mention Stark Building, even Taran Industries is taller than it. It's a pity that Justin Hammer still wants to compete with Tony, without even noticing that his own building is much lower. But the scenery that John didn't like was watched with great interest by others. As soon as he entered, John noticed 2 people inside. General Ross and a man in a dark blue suit. He was probably in his 50s. His face was not old, but he had many wrinkles due to excessive thinking. But compared to people in his position, he is already young and promising. The man stood there, and even General Ross could only stand. When John saw the other person, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Hattie whispered in her ear, "This is Secretary of State Ruth Abush." Secretary of State. Their status is only below that of the President and Vice President. No wonder General Ross, a hardline military leader, had to give him face. Compared to the position of general, the position of Secretary of State is higher. However, John's surprise was not because of the man's position, but because they had met before.